The mood around Philadelphia has changed fast over the last few days, and it really feels like one of those moments where a single decision can shape the entire offseason. Just when fans were starting to look ahead and digest the changes on offense, a wave of uncertainty hit the city, bringing anxiety right back to the surface. For a brief stretch, it felt like the Eagles were walking a tightrope, balancing optimism with the fear of losing one of the most important pieces of their recent success. The initial buzz was all about movement and renewal. There was genuine excitement surrounding the idea of a new offensive direction, with fresh voices coming in and the promise of an attack that could finally find consistency again. After a season filled with frustration on that side of the ball, any sign of evolution was welcomed with open arms. People started to imagine how the scheme could change, how certain players might be unlocked, and how the offense could once again match the standard that Philadelphia expects. For a moment, it felt like the page had truly been turned. Then the conversation shifted, and not in a good way. Rumors began circulating that Vic Fangio was seriously considering retirement, and that single possibility sent shockwaves through the fan base. It was not just about losing a defensive coordinator. It was about losing the backbone of what kept this team competitive. While the offense struggled to find its footing, the defense consistently showed up, fought, and carried the Eagles through some of their most important wins. The thought of entering another offseason scramble, especially so late in the process, was enough to make anyone uneasy. The concern was understandable. Fangio's influence on this defense has been massive, from structure to discipline to putting players in positions to succeed. His system allowed the Eagles to survive stretches where the offense simply could not keep up. Against strong opponents, it was the defense that set the tone, forced mistakes, and gave the team a chance to win. Losing that stability, especially after already seeing coaching departures elsewhere, would have left a massive void that would be nearly impossible to fill at this stage. That is why the latest update landed like a breath of fresh air across the city. The sense now is that Fangio is expected to return, and that alone changes the entire outlook of the offseason. Suddenly, the Eagles are no longer reacting to disaster. They are planning with intention. Instead of scrambling for replacements, the front office can focus on strengthening what already works. Instead of worrying about scheme continuity, players can prepare knowing the system remains intact. It is also important to acknowledge how close this situation came to going the other way. Fangio seriously weighing retirement is not something to brush aside, and it naturally opened the door for speculation. In Philadelphia, speculation often turns into full-blown narratives, and that is exactly what happened. Some voices rushed to frame this as proof of organizational dysfunction, as if the consideration of retirement by a veteran coach automatically meant chaos behind the scenes. That idea caught fire quickly, feeding into existing frustrations from last season. There is no denying that the Eagles had issues. Decisions were questioned, roles were debated, and certain situations were handled in ways that left a sour taste. Criticism is fair, and accountability matters. But turning every challenge into a sign that the entire organization is broken ignores context. Fangio is a veteran who has been in football for decades, and at his age, thinking about retirement is not shocking or controversial. It is human. After a long career filled with highs, lows, and ultimately championships, the idea of stepping away is natural. What makes this moment significant is not that Fangio considered retiring, but that the Eagles were able to convince him to stay. That speaks to trust, to belief in the direction of the team, and to unfinished business. It also suggests that the front office understands how critical he is to the future of this defense. Keeping him in place provides clarity, and clarity is something this team desperately needs after a turbulent season. With that domino falling, the bigger picture starts to come into focus. The Eagles can now approach the offseason with a clear defensive identity, which directly impacts personnel decisions. Free agency conversations take on new meaning when the coaching staff is settled. Players who fit Fangio's system become priorities, and continuity becomes a selling point rather than a question mark. That stability alone could be a major factor in convincing key contributors to stay. There is also a broader lesson here about patience. The offseason is long, and not every piece of information tells the full story. Quick reactions often miss nuance, and nuance matters in a league as complex as this one. The Eagles are not a perfect organization, but they are far from the disaster some tried to paint. The fact that Fangio is expected back reinforces the idea that, despite the noise, there is still a strong foundation in place. Now, with the immediate panic fading, attention naturally shifts to what comes next. The front office can finally operate without the cloud of uncertainty hovering overhead. Decisions about the roster, particularly on the defensive side, can be made with confidence rather than caution. The Eagles know who they are building around, and that alone gives them a significant advantage heading into the most critical months of the year. As things stand, this moment feels like a turning point, not because everything is suddenly fixed, but because the worst-case scenario was avoided. The defense retains its leader, the organization regains its footing, and the off-season path becomes far clearer. There is still plenty of work to do, tough choices to make, and challenges ahead, but the foundation remains intact, and that changes everything about how the Eagles move forward from here. With the defensive staff settled, the conversation naturally turns toward the roster and how the Eagles choose to navigate an offseason that is full of tough decisions. Stability on the sideline creates pressure in the front office, because now there are no easy excuses. The blueprint is there, the scheme is clear, and the expectations are high. The question becomes how Philadelphia balances loyalty to proven contributors with the reality of a salary cap that forces difficult choices every single year. Several defensive players are approaching free agency, and each case brings its own debate. These are not fringe names or depth-only pieces, but players who have played real snaps and mattered in meaningful moments. Keeping everyone is not realistic, and that is where strategy comes into play. The Eagles have to decide which skill sets are truly essential to the future of this defense, and which roles can be replaced through the draft or internal development without a major drop-off in performance. Financially, the situation is tight, but not hopeless. With the league cap rising again, Philadelphia has a workable amount of space to operate, though not enough to go on a spending spree. It likely means choosing one major defensive priority and possibly one secondary move, rather than trying to retain the entire group. This is where continuity with the defensive coordinator matters, because fit within the system often outweighs raw name value. A player who understands the scheme and executes it consistently can be more valuable than a flashier option who needs time to adjust. One area that feels increasingly important is the interior of the defensive line. This unit has quietly become the heartbeat of the defense, and it is not hard to see why the organization views it as a long-term investment. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis represent more than just talent. They represent identity. They control the line of scrimmage, collapse pockets, and make life easier for everyone behind them. When those two are right, the entire defense looks faster and more aggressive. Extending those players sooner rather than later could be one of the smartest moves the Eagles make. Beyond rewarding performance, early extensions can provide cap flexibility, opening space to maneuver elsewhere on the roster. Carter, in particular, has the kind of impact that changes games even when he is not filling the stat sheet. Davis has shown growth and resilience, stepping up when called upon and proving that he can be a cornerstone rather than just a role player. Locking them in sends a message about priorities and direction. Of course, every move comes with trade-offs. Restructures and extensions can push money into the future, which is a calculated risk. But the Eagles have never been shy about managing the cap aggressively when they believe the window to compete is open. With a core that still includes elite talent on both sides of the ball, there is a strong argument that now is not the time to hesitate. While much of the focus has been on defense, the offense remains a major storyline, particularly when it comes to personalities and relationships. Few topics generate more noise than speculation about star players, and the discussion surrounding A.J. Brown has been impossible to ignore. Every gesture, every photo, every rumor gets dissected and turned into something bigger than it likely is. That kind of attention can distort reality and create tension where there may be none. From a football perspective, moving on from a player like Brown would be incredibly difficult to justify. True number one wide receivers do not grow on trees, and the Eagles know better than most how hard it is to find consistent production at that position. Brown has been a difference maker since the moment he arrived, changing how defenses line up and opening space for others. If there are issues, the priority should be resolution, not separation. Trading a player of that caliber rarely brings equal value, especially when contracts and cap implications are involved. The return might look acceptable on paper, but the impact on the field tells a different story. Philadelphia has been down this road before, cycling through receivers and searching for answers. Letting go of a proven star risks reopening wounds that took years to heal. All of this ties back to the quarterback. Jalen Hurts remains the central figure in the Eagles' long-term vision, and everything ultimately flows through him. Seeing him relaxed and confident after a disappointing end to the season matters more than some might admit. Hurts has built his career on resilience, responding to setbacks with growth rather than doubt. His track record speaks for itself, and it would be unwise to underestimate his ability to lead another deep run. The upcoming season will be shaped heavily by the new offensive structure and how quickly it clicks. A fresh voice calling plays brings both opportunity and uncertainty, but there is reason for optimism. Those who have worked closely with the new coordinator speak highly of his football mind, preparation, and ability to connect with players. That endorsement carries weight, especially coming from respected figures around the league. Ultimately, the Eagles find themselves at a crossroads that is familiar yet unique. The roster is talented, the coaching staff has clarity, and the expectations remain sky-high. The margin for error is thin, but the potential is undeniable. Every decision made from this point forward will ripple through the organization, shaping not just the coming season, but the identity of the team for years to come. There is also a quiet confidence building around the idea that continuity, more than splashy moves, could be what pushes this team forward again. When a locker room knows what to expect from its coaching staff and trusts the direction being set, preparation changes. Players can focus on execution instead of adjustment, on refinement instead of relearning. That kind of environment often brings out the best version of a roster, especially one that has already experienced success together and understands how narrow the gap is between contending and falling short. The draft will inevitably play a role in shaping this next phase as well, particularly for a front office that has shown patience and creativity in building through multiple avenues. Young talent, when paired with established leaders, can accelerate growth across the roster. With clear needs and a defined scheme, the Eagles are in a position to target players who fit specific roles rather than reaching out of desperation. That alignment between coaching vision and personnel strategy is something the organization has chased for years, and now it finally feels attainable again. As the offseason continues to unfold, the noise will not disappear. Speculation, opinions, and debates will keep swirling, especially in a market that lives and breathes football. But beneath all of that, there is a sense that the Eagles are recalibrating rather than unraveling. The pieces are still there, the ambition has not faded, and the belief inside the building appears stronger than the outside chatter suggests, setting the stage for what could be a defining stretch ahead. FlyEaglesFly News family, smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments, and let's talk birds. Whispers began circulating through league circles late in the evening, and by the time they reached the locker rooms, the message was clear. Something big may be brewing between the Eagles and the Buccaneers. According to sources close to both organizations, the two NFC franchises are engaged in advanced discussions over a potential trade that, if finalized, could dramatically alter the balance of power in the conference. Nothing has been signed, nothing has been announced, but the mere possibility has already set executives, players, and fans on edge. The speculation centers on a bold exchange of high-impact pieces rather than the usual depth-for-pick scenario. The Eagles, known for their aggressive front office approach, are believed to be exploring a move that would address immediate championship ambitions, even if it means reshaping parts of their roster. On the other side, the Buccaneers appear open to a strategic reset, eyeing long-term flexibility while remaining competitive in a fiercely contested NFC landscape. What makes this rumor particularly explosive is the timing. Both teams see themselves as contenders, yet both face lingering questions in key areas. League insiders suggest that this shared urgency has created an unusual alignment of interests, opening the door for negotiations that once seemed unlikely. The word surprise keeps surfacing in conversations, hinting that the names involved may catch even seasoned observers off guard. Around the league, rival executives are watching closely. A deal of this magnitude would not exist in a vacuum. It would ripple through the NFC, forcing contenders to reassess their strategies and perhaps accelerate their own plans. Coaches, meanwhile, are said to be quietly preparing contingency scenarios, fully aware that one unexpected move can redefine a season's narrative. For now, everything remains unofficial, living in the gray zone between rumor and reality. But in a league where smoke often precedes fire, the Buccaneers talks are impossible to ignore. If this speculation turns into action, the NFC may soon look very different. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.